And we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here at Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows. And if you can, please check us out everywhere you get your podcasts or on our friends at Lakerholics.Pets Podcast Network. It is sincerely appreciated. Can we just do a mulligan, a do-over, or something like that? Because the Lakers clearly weren't prepared to play today, and the bad start got even worse that they took off of in the first quarter because AD, Anthony Davis, unfortunately, after 9 minutes, went out with back spasms. But by that time, the fire had already started, and it just kept going and going and going. And unfortunately, they led by, I think, 23 at the half. The Clippers did in tonight's game, and just basically put in cruise control from there, and ended up defeating the Lakers handily, 118-94. Just a disappointing game overall, with the only highlight being Kyle Kuzma's performance, 25 points and 5 rebounds. But outside of that, really not much more to talk about. Anything that's positive anyways. 37% from the field, 27% from three-point area, and 62% from the line. These are bad numbers all the way around. Turnovers, only 10. I think that's probably the only saving grace, but when you're getting hand over fist, it's not good. But here today to talk about the game, and more importantly, what's at stake tomorrow, which you've got to be here for when we talk after that game, is a good man indeed. You got to catch him every time out when he puts out a new article that's very informative and also very opinionated at his articles that you can check out today at medium.com and Lakerholics.com. It is my good friend. It is Tom Wong that I know him as, but you know him as Laker Tom. And Laker Tom, you have THT on the shelf with I think a calf injury. He was sidelined before the game. You have Schroeder in health and safety protocols. Most likely he has the coronavirus. You have LeBron, who the latest word is that he's going to be out another couple games at the very minimum. He said next week at the earliest that he would be available. And Anthony Davis, after a inspiring performance on Monday in the victory over the Denver Nuggets, unfortunately, after 9 minutes of lethargic play, back spasms started occurring. And as I'm not going to go ahead and beat up on Anthony Davis on that, because, as someone who has had and experienced back spasms and has back issues, I know that's a lot of that. I know that's a world of hurt.
Yeah, you basically, if something's wrong with your back, you just cannot play NBA basketball. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reactions are just. It's just that impending pain that it's going to happen when you make certain moves. Mm-hmm. And it's, there's nothing more debilitating that I found in sports than having a bad back. I mean, you can have a sore arm, I guess, if you're a pitcher or a quarterback, but pretty much a bad back takes away your athleticism.
Yeah.
And it makes you so tentative because you're just, you don't want to react in fast time, and in some ways you don't have the physicality to do it because of your back. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny you mentioned the 11 turnovers that we had. We forced 22 turnovers and only had 11, and you'd think we'd benefit from that. The truth of the matter is those 11 turnovers that we made led to 30 points. And
pretty bad.
I mean, that's. Talk about the basketball gods just really, and karma can be a bitch, just really shutting you down, because that was the one category the Lakers did well in, and they ended up, having a bad beat on that one too. So it was a tough game all the way around.
Defense was awful. Let me run these numbers real quick. 53% from the field for the Clippers, 41% from three, and 88 at the free throw line. Dominated on all three ends there. At this point, if you're a Lakers fan, you're thinking play-in. You're thinking seventh place right now. Tomorrow is a huge, huge game. If there's any hope for the Lakers to holding on to the sixth seed, because Dallas, with their victory tonight, is starting to distance themselves from both Portland and also the Lakers. So they pretty much got fifth at this point in time because they've got the tiebreaker on the Lakers. But even if the Lakers win tomorrow night, they're still probably going to be at the best 6th seed. But yeah, it's going to be very concerning tomorrow night if you're losing at Portland. I told you before, after we left the air, I said that they would lose this game but win tomorrow, and I'm hoping.
Yeah, I sort of predicted the same thing too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that
we're half right. We're half right, man.
Yeah, but this is the half I didn't want to be right on. Yeah, well, I want to hear.
It's always a parlay because you got to win both halves of it when you make that prediction.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts though on tomorrow's game and how important it is for the Los Angeles Lakers.
I'm pretty much convinced that we're probably going to end up in the 7th seed and be in the tournament, but at least it's double elimination for the 7th and 8th seeds, so when we're not going to fall further than that. So it's hard to imagine us losing twice in a row in the play-in tournament. And I think the team has pretty well accepted that there is no championship unless we're healthy. So therefore you just it doesn't matter where you seed. That's a secondary factor because all that really matters is you get healthy. And that means that I sure wouldn't be playing Anthony Davis tomorrow. I just accept that 7th seed. We still have two tough games. We've got
Phoenix on the way.
Portland and Phoenix. That's
New York
games. You lose those 2 games, and you're definitely in the 7th seed. You do have 4 games that are winnable, and you hope LeBron is back by those last 4 games, and you hope that AD really didn't hurt anything in this particular thing. Man, that was just like a slap in the face to see him just step backwards and step on a hidden wheel from a table there on the sidelines.
And that's all it takes.
There's a few things. There's a few things that do jump out at me in these games because while I thought we would do better in these games, but I didn't think we'd still be injured like we are. But what sort of jumped out at me is that the center situation is starting to get clearer each game. Tonight it was, we were down by 25 before Drummond even scored his 3rd and 4th points of the night. Yep. And he turned the ball over several times, and he'd miss bunnies off of certain plays. And
well, let me put it to you like this. And it was at one point in time I was keeping track of it also on a side scoreboard. At one point in time, the Clippers centers were over the Lakers centers, and that includes Marc Gasol. They were over the Los Angeles Lakers at one time by 25-0.
Right. It all comes down to health because you have to have AD at the 5 if you're going to win the championship. Yeah. You're not going to win the championship with Gasol, Harrell, and Drummond playing your 48 minutes at center. I don't care what kind of combination you put in. Either the most favorable combination that I would choose, which would be Gasol, Drummond, and Harrell in that order, and maybe Gasol, Harrell, and Drummond in that order even. If Drummond still doesn't. This is a game where if he cannot beat the Clippers centers, what is he going to do? It's impossible to imagine him prevailing over any other center other than possibly the Nets, just because they're really weak on the inside. But he's not going to prevail over the Jazz. He's not going to prevail over the Clippers. He's not going to prevail over the Nuggets. He's just an odd player in a sense that he's so inefficient for being so athletic. He's the guy that everybody who's out here watching him play, who's ever coached basketball at all at any level, says, man, I wish I had a kid like that to teach how to do the right things and how to understand where he is on the floor and have some sense of the flow of the ball and the flow of the players in the game. Those are the essentials for basketball intelligence, and Dre just doesn't have those, and it just also too, you cannot the Clippers play drop coverage off of their centers. So every time you set a pick and roll, the center's not going to let anybody get behind him. And he's going to give you that little mid-range shot if you want to take it and so forth. And it just clogs up the middle so you can't attack. Although we don't have any guys left who can attack. That's, Caruso, man, if I was Caruso, I'd spend the entire offseason throwing passes into bullseyes somewhere, because his passes are always either too low or too high or too off to the left or too off to the right. Every time a player catches a pass from him, they have to waste another half second or two just to catch the ball and stand and get into a three-point position. Yeah. It's never right in the pocket and so forth. And these things are obviously, multiplied when you're playing without your superstars. But like you said, this game was decided before Davis injured himself.
Absolutely.
It was pretty obvious at that point. I think we were down 9 minutes left. It must have been 20-10 or something like that at that point in time.
Yep.
Pretty close.
24-14.
24-14. Okay.
Yep. So.
None of these games matter. All that matters is how healthy can LeBron and AD be, and at least not only healthy, but having their game together. They did it very short time last year, but it's so many things went right last year that were, maybe 8-1, 9-1, 10-1 shots. We had a parlay of
well, that has to happen in a championship.
And frankly, most championships, you have to have that parlay of things happening, which is why it's so hard to repeat and to three-peat and four-peat and so forth. But it all starts with health, and then it all starts with being able to win the play-in tournament in the first round, so that you can get your team back into rhythm again. Somehow you got to be able to survive that. The last thing we want to do is, and maybe the Clippers right now might be feeling that the best thing they could possibly do would be to play the Lakers in the first round. They want to hold that number 3 spot, because if they hold that 3 spot and we get pushed down, we'd get pushed down past 6. So that wouldn't happen. Huh?
No, we would be looking at Phoenix right now. Yep. So anyways, we would be looking at Phoenix at this point in time. So once again, it is the Lakers, unfortunately, getting beat handily by the LA Clippers, 118-94. They now are, like we talked about, clearly in a must-win situation going into Portland. They are now tied with Portland. They're still considered 6th place, but tomorrow night is the tiebreaker. So Portland wins, they'll have the tiebreaker over the Lakers. And we will be here tomorrow night after the game, hopefully with some better news. But Laker Tom, before we head on out, and thank you so much, Reed. We truly appreciate the thumbs up on Facebook. We cannot thank you enough for doing so. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And please check us out on the Hoop Beds Podcast Network and all the great shows there. And, of course, everything that you do at Lakerholics.com, Laker Tom. But before we head on out, because we are going to leave early, because if we stay on for long, we're just going to be talking some grumbling stuff again. And we want to get prepped. We want to actually keep everybody going for tomorrow night's showing of the Portland Trailblazers and everybody coming on for that. But before we head on out, my friend, please give everybody an update of what you're doing at Lakerholics.com.
Well, I think I was working in advance for a story based upon tomorrow's game, because it's going to be such an important game. I think just like Gerald, I predicted that we were going to lose tonight. I didn't think we would lose as badly as we did, and hope that there were more silver linings in it. But the game tomorrow is really important from a lot of standpoints. It's trying to keep out of it, trying to keep at the 6th position and not slide down to 7. The more you can do that, the better you're going to be in the end. I think that what's interesting is going to be who's going to play center tomorrow, against Portland. And if it's Drummond, man, Andre needs to have a big game, because he's due for a big game, or he's not going to, no matter what they've promised him to sign him, Frank Vogel is not going to be afraid to make a change when we get into the playoffs. And Drummond is playing for his starting position. He could be filler and play, 20, 24 minutes a game, but probably after Marc Gasol starts and before Anthony Davis finishes the game. So these games are still important. I thought Wes Matthews tonight played pretty well too. Kind of an interesting situation there. So
he played a lot of minutes.
Yeah, we still got this. Well, he plays defense. That's the one thing you can say for Wes.
Yeah,
he may be getting beaten because he's 36 years old, but the kid knows how to play defense and he knows how to position himself, and he's not afraid of bigger players. And that's one of our problems, that when we go small without LeBron and AD, all of a sudden that big advantage is we're small. Our small ball used to be a joke because it was really bully ball. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. I mean, we need to pull off a win.
Absolutely. That we do indeed. But once again, if you have any questions for us, at Lakers Fast Break on Twitter, at Laker Tom on Twitter, and of course, you can email us, LakersFastBreak@yahoo.com. And as always, you can check out all the comments, all the interaction, and all the great conversation each and every day at Lakerholics.com. All the great articles that Jamie Sweet puts up there with his 5 things section, all the stuff that Laker Tom does. Sean Grice, a.k.a. Magic Man, puts his words of wisdom down there, especially from a historical standpoint. So he goes back into basketball history. L. Rob is there with his great comments as well. And, of course, the latest episodes of the Lakers Fast Break you can find there. And speaking of podcasts, please check out our friends at Hoopheads Podcast Network. Please support their sponsors, because we really need your help to put out some great content, and is truly appreciated when you do. But Laker Tom and everyone out there, we cannot thank you enough for participating, watching, listening, the thumbs up, the whole 9 yards. We will be back tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow after the big game. I'm going to say right now it's a battle for 6th place in the Western Conference as the Lakers and also the Portland Trailblazers meet up. And we'll be here after the game to talk to you about what's going on in the standings, what's going on with the game itself, how does it look for the Lakers as they close out the rest of the season. We'll be talking about that and more coming up tomorrow night right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Thank you so much for watching and listening, everyone. Truly appreciate it.